And for Northern Ireland, a weather front here will bring thicker cloud and some outbreaks of rain, perhaps fringing into the far north of England by the afternoon. But further south, with the strong sunshine, temperatures will be remarkably high, shooting up from Thursday up to 34 Celsius in places before coming down at the weekend.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hey, welcome to the Mark Steyn Show. Oh, this year I'm off to Kigali. Viva Rwanda. Not so fast. The air traffic controllers on the European Court of Human Rights have something to say about that. Cabin doors to manual, says the judge. Neil Oliver is going to weigh in on that. If you can't go to Rwanda, how do you fancy Linton-on-Ouse? The plan to turn a North Yorkshire village into Club 1830, male only, is back on. The local MP, Kevin Hollingrake, is going to be with us. The big priority for the World Health Organization is to ensure that when you die, it's from a virus with a non-stigmatizing name. So they're going to rename the monkeypox. No more. Away with the monkeypox. They're going to rename it the ginger growler pox. I don't know, the Harry and Meghan pox. The Piers Morgan pox. That's where you break out on every bus side in the British Isles. Natalie Winters is going to bring us up to speed on that, and the Statman, Jamie Jenkins, is going to take a look at the price of petrol, plus your views on the passing charivari. gbviews@gbnews.uk is our email. You can tweet us at gbnews. It's all coming up after Polly Middlehurst with the latest headlines.
Mark, thank you. Sources in Downing Street are saying tonight the Prime Minister is surprised by the resignation of his ethics advisor. Lord Geit said with regret he felt it was the right thing to do. That's after the independent advisor on ministers' interests yesterday told a Commons committee it was reasonable to suggest the PM breached the ministerial code when he was fined by police over Partygate. The ethics aide also told the panel resignation is one of the few tools available to advisors in expressing their frustrations. Labour's deputy leader, Angela Rayner, says Boris Johnson's government is mired in sleaze and renewed calls for him to go. In other news today, the Home Secretary is insisting the government will continue with its plan to deport illegal migrants to Rwanda. That's despite a last-minute ruling last night by the European Court that stopped a planned deportation flight. A spokesperson for the Prime Minister says they're keeping all options on the table, including potentially withdrawing from the European Convention on Human Rights. Priti Patel says preparations for the next flights have already begun.
While this decision by the Strasbourg court to intervene was disappointing and surprising given the repeated and considered judgments to the contrary in our domestic courts, we remain committed to this policy.
Yorkshire Cricket Club and a number of individuals have been charged by the England and Wales Cricket Board over allegations of racism. An independent panel of the Cricket Discipline Commission will now decide if the individuals have brought the game into disrepute. The ECB hasn't named those involved, and the charges follow an investigation into the club's handling of racism allegations made by the player Azim Rafiq. The government says it's disappointed that the European Union has decided to take legal action against the UK over plans to unilaterally override the Northern Ireland Protocol. The EU says if Britain doesn't respond within 2 months to their challenge, it'll take the UK to the European Court of Justice. European Commission Vice President Maros Šefčovič warned the UK's move has no legal or political justification. And Prince William has called England women trailblazers for football as he wished them loads of luck ahead of their home Euros next month. The Duke of Cambridge visited the squad at their Burton-upon-Trent headquarters as part of his duties as chairman of the Football Association. Prince William says the Lionesses will do the country proud. And he was presented with some replica football shirts for his 3 children by the captain, Leah Williamson. Lovely. You're up to date on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News, where now it's time for Mark Steyn.
Thank you, Paulie. I think what's the old saw? 90% of journalism is announcing that Lord Jones is dead to people who never knew Lord Jones was alive. That's pretty much the way I feel about the latest shock news out of the Westminster Village, that people who Lord Geit, you have to announce that Lord Geit has quit to people who never knew Lord Geit was in the job in the first place. In the broader sense, does party politics matter? They had Prime Minister's questions today, and not a single question on last night's British humiliation, the Rwandan flight that did not fly, because one by one, every passenger was removed by order of the so-called European Court of Human Rights. Whatever you think of the Rwanda policy, it is the policy of a democratically elected government with a large majority in the national legislature, and that policy has withstood legal challenge in that nation's courts all the way up to its supposedly Supreme Court. Nevertheless, all that was overruled by some judge in a town called Strasbourg, which is not in the United Kingdom at all. It's not even in the remote outlying islands of the UK. Which mighty judge is it who, as the jet idled on the runway, effortlessly overruled the British courts, the British government, the British Parliament and the British people? Well, we don't know, because they ain't going to tell us. Was it the Albanian judge, the Andorran judge, the Armenian judge, the Azerbaijani judge? I'm just going through the A's here, but I'm happy to work my way alphabetically all the way to the Turkish and Ukrainian judges. There is actually a UK judge on that court, but he comes absolutely right at the bottom after the Ukrainian guy. Justice should not only be done, but should manifestly and undoubtedly be seen to be done, said Viscount Hewitt, but he was an English judge, so what does he know? Given that this no-name jurist in northeastern France is more powerful than anybody in the British state, maybe we should just replace PMQs with Euro judge queues. But as his identity cannot be disclosed, he'd have to be behind the blind date curtain or have his face all pixelated or something. Jamaica, Tuvalu, the Falklands, Mauritius, Pitcairn Island, Kiribati, Brunei, and many others all have the advantage on us because their court of final appeal is Her Majesty's Privy Council in London, which at least holds court in public and puts its judges' names to its orders and decisions. No such luck for the mother country. But don't worry, Strasbourg's big bencher brother is watching us. So PMQs seems entirely irrelevant to anything that matters and of no interest whatsoever unless you're simply looking for a team to support and you lost interest in footy when Accrington Stanley got knocked out by Doncaster Rovers in the 2007 quarter-finals. That suits Keir Starmer. He can talk about trivia while all the unpopular leftist stuff that he really digs gets imposed by anonymous Albanians and Azerbaijanis. But the government's position is a little murkier. Yesterday on this show, Kate Hoey and John O'Sullivan both talked about credibility, which is vital. The government needs to show, quote, we mean it, as Lady Hoey said. Does Boris Johnson's ersatz Conservative pseudo-Tory ministry really mean the Rwanda policy? Even if it worked, it would only see the deportation of maybe 100 persons a year, or less than 1/4 of the, quote, migrants who landed on England's southern shore just yesterday. 444 migrants just on Tuesday. Actually, it's a little higher than that because I don't think it includes the 12 people who managed to get to a beach in Devon and just walk into the country. Even if the Rwanda policy worked, almost all of yesterday's intake will be staying. But that's not good enough. So even as 444 went through the express check-in, courtesy of the laughably misnamed UK Border Force, the last 7 deportees bound for Rwanda were voted off that plane one by one. 7, 6, 5, 4. It's almost like they're trying to rub our noses in the irrelevancy and the impotence of our political system. You can vote for whoever you want, and sometimes your guy may even win. But there's an Azerbaijani in Strasbourg who knows better than you what's best for you. We have a sham simulacrum of self-government. All the dress-up games like PMQs continue, but underneath the pantomime is nothing. Let me know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk is our email address. Neil Oliver is the host of Neil Oliver Live every Saturday on GB News, and we are always happy to see him. Neil, you had a tweet this morning suggesting that this whole thing is just a bit of theatre.
Yes, I did. I invited people to speculate whether or not it was ever intended to work. And it's part of a philosophy that I've been using for the last couple of years, really, that, keep it simple. Simple explanations seem to help here. And I think the Rwandan plan didn't work because it wasn't ever intended to work. We are now, and it seems likely we will remain subject to the European Court of Human Justice. So, with that in mind, the architects of the Rwanda plan had to have known in advance and all along that any attempt that might be made to send someone seeking asylum to Rwanda would be cast down by that court. So bringing that plan forward was always and only an exercise in futility. You talked there about the irrelevancy and impotency of our political system and it being a sham and our noses being rubbed in something. And I would say it becomes increasingly difficult to avoid drawing the conclusion that what is happening now in so many spheres is what is meant to happen. And I think as individuals and collectively, we can free ourselves of a lot of the troubling disbelief and incomprehension if you just go for Occam's razor and say, well, if it's happening this way, it's because someone wants it to happen this way.
Yeah, I think that's actually a very good way of putting it, Neil. What I find disturbing is that you get the feeling the elites know all this. As you say, this is what they want to happen. I was very struck by one thing from that European court decision, which said they were concerned that as Rwanda was not within the jurisdiction of the European court, that they didn't know, they wouldn't be able to do anything about whatever happens in Rwanda. So it's almost as if Britain is not free. Now, Britain is not free to enter into relations that are non-European. I mean, Rwanda's part of the Commonwealth, for good or ill. The Commonwealth is 54 countries. It's a third of the world's population. But apparently, because it's not subject to the European court, we can't do any deals with Commonwealth countries. That's complete rubbish, isn't it?
Well, yes. I think in a certain significant way, we never have left the European Union. I think we're invited to think that the little relic tails, the dotted lines that continue to connect us there, for example, the European Convention on Human Rights and the court, we were invited to think, well, that didn't really matter. Don't look over there. Look over here at all the other exciting potential. I think the truth of it is that when it comes down to it, when it really matters, we're still under the bailiwick, we're enthralled to decisions that are being made in Europe, and I think that the problem fundamentally is that the establishment in Britain, of which the government, the elected government, is only a part, the establishment in Britain wants open borders, I think, and wants globalization, or at least you'd have to allow for that possibility, and that any government of the day is therefore posturing impotently in apparent defiance of that. It's just meaningless. And I found it as well so galling that all of this was happening in the context of human rights. You know, where were these lawyers, these human rights lawyers, when 60, 70 million British people were shut up in their homes, were being coerced to take experimental vaccines, and were losing their jobs if they didn't? You know, where were the cries for human rights and human justice then? Such that the fact that they appear on stage brightly spotlit in this context, well, you have to say, presumably it's because there's money to be made here. You know, as always, you know, follow the money. Have these human rights lawyers just been pulled out of wherever it is they spend the rest of their time, you know, by the lure of filthy lucre? And you just have to wonder about what we're being told and what we're expected to believe. This whole idea that the problem, that the arrival of illegal immigrants on the south coast of England is intractable, I just don't believe that for a minute. We're being told a lot of nonsense. The same establishment that when they decided from one moment to the next that they wanted to shut the entire population down, shut the economy down, shut the pubs, shut the restaurants, shut the theatres, close the borders, put all the aircraft on the ground. They did it with a snap of the fingers. And we're supposed to believe that that complex, ingenious machinery can't be applied to stop the illegal landing of some dinghies. It's absolute nonsense. Yeah. If there was will, genuine will and intention to stop the arrival of illegal immigration, whatever you think about it, if the will was there, then it would happen. And so Occam's razor, to me, suggests that it doesn't happen because it's not supposed to happen.
Doesn't Occam's razor also suggest that our rulers have made a calculation about us, not just with the fact that when they say you got to be jabbed in your arms to get on a train, get on a plane, keep your job at the NHS, whatever we come up with next, that we will go along with that. And at the same time, if they simply say, well, you can vote however, you can vote for a party that's going to control immigration, they won't be able to control illegal immigration. That's just the way it is. I mean, if they actually were worried, they would understand that telling people that your vote doesn't matter and your opinion on illegal immigration doesn't matter would be, throughout history, to be inviting revolutionary conditions, because they're saying democracy doesn't matter, voting doesn't matter. But they figure they've got our number and they can get by with it.
Well, it would be incumbent upon us, beholden we would need to demonstrate that that's not the case. I've said before that I think the social contract has been broken. You know, that Hobbesian notion that if we keep our noses clean and behave, but surrender a little bit of our liberty as the price of that, the state will protect us, look after us, and protect our other liberties and keep us safe. And I've been saying for a long time now that I think that the infidelity, the lack of faith that has compromised that contract, that oath, it's the establishment, it's the state that has cheated on us. And it's absolutely, before, underneath, right at the basis of common law, is that notion that it is our obligation as moral creatures to disobey and to disregard immoral laws. You know, the Nuremberg laws were all about the fact that, you know, that just trying to say that you obeyed orders was not sufficient to get you off with having either done certain things or stood by while other things were seen to have happened. I think we are in a situation now where, yes, you're right, I think the government or the political class or the establishment are goading us to some extent. They're seeing, they saw with lockdown, I think to some extent to their surprise, how submissive so many people were and how willing they were just to knuckle under and do what they were told. And I think now that the establishment have that bit between their teeth, they're now just thinking, well, if we got away with that, we can get away with so much more. And that notion that, you know, if they allowed, you know, if voting changed anything, they'd make it illegal. I mean, I don't think they need to make it illegal. I think it's just the case that voting doesn't change anything. You just get to choose different colours for the shirts that the government are wearing. Underneath the shirts, they're all the same.
Yeah, you're right. It's like an FA Cup final in which whichever team you support, you lose and our rulers win. Thank you very much for that, Neil. We will see you Saturday at 6 p.m. You always get to the heart of these things. And just to underline the impotence and irrelevance, thank you, Neil, but just to underline the impotence and irrelevance of the citizenry in the world Neil outlined, you'll recall we talked about the Home Office plan to house 1,500 so-called asylum seekers at the abandoned RAF base at Linton-on-Ouse in North Yorkshire, and thereby swamp that ancient village, goes back to the Doomsday Book and before, that ancient village's small population will be swamped about 2 to 1 with young male refugees under 40 and give it a sex imbalance of about 80% male, 20% female. After the public disquiet, voiced on GB News, but not on many other channels, we were told the Home Office had put on hold their scheme to convert the base into Club 1830, male only. But we now learn that, in fact, they're going ahead and hiring the cleaners and security staff for the facility. Oh, and they've got a job opening for an activity coordinator for the camp. What kind of activities do 1,500 young men like to do? Well, there's only 250 or so women over the age of consent in the village, so I can see why you need somebody to coordinate the origami sessions and musical theatre rehearsals. Gee, it's almost like they're just laughing at us. Kevin Hollingrake is the Member of Parliament, and we've had him on the show before, and we're glad he's back. Kevin, Kevin, that's his fetching view of his stomach, but I'm not sure. Is the top bit of him there? That was a great shot of his tummy. I did enjoy that shot. Kevin, good to see you again. Did you know that they were advertising for all this camp staff for this facility?
Well, it's quite interesting, isn't it? I had a conversation with the Home Office officials a few weeks ago, and I was saying how, you know, bored and these asylum seekers would be on the site, being there for 6 months in a small village like Linton-on-Ouse. And they said, no, you got this all wrong, Kevin. You don't understand. It's a wonderful site they're moving to, and on that site they'll be kept busy all day. There are 100 different species of tree on the site. So I think the Home Office is kind of pretty far the mark in terms of understanding the what will happen when these 1,500 young single men move into the centre of a small rural village in North Yorkshire and will be bored out of their minds most of the time and will look for other things to do. And that's a real concern for many people in Linton-on-Ouse. Clearly, most of these people will be law-abiding, decent people, but some won't, and that's a real worry to these residents. And the Home Office effectively is making the village the sacrificial lambs for a national policy. It's absolutely wrong, and I will oppose it with every breath in my body.
What is the mood in the village these days? It was not happy when Mark White from GBNews went up there and talked to villagers. How they presumably were relieved at the temporary reprieve. How are they feeling when they hear about these activities coordinators treating this place as a kind of summer camp?
Well, the village is panic-stricken. You know, they really are. I've had everybody from elderly residents through to, young girls, 9, 10-year-old, come to me and say how worried they are about this. This is going to destroy their lives. There's no doubt about it. It takes away their freedoms, their liberties. It changes life forever in Linton-on-Ouse. All those freedoms are taken away from people, and house prices will plummet. The whole village is ruined as a result of this. These are non-detained people in the centre of a village. It's just unthinkable that anybody would think of doing this in such a location. And the vast majority of people I've spoken to, be it parliamentarians, be it the local authority, be it the police, be it indeed the refugee agencies, agree with that position. It's simply wrong. The Home Office must reconsider, cannot really sacrifice the lives, the freedoms of 600 people in that village in North Yorkshire. It's simply wrong. I cannot believe the Home Office is considering doing this.
What does the Home Secretary have to say about this? She talks a good game. She always has on the matter of these migrants washing up on England's shores. She always gives good sound bites when she's interviewed. But what does she say about this, for which she has cabinet responsibility?
Well, the Home Secretary is very sympathetic to the position, my position and those of the residents, but she's also under massive pressure to deal with this crisis in terms of the small boat crossing. So I understand why she's looking for a solution, and part of the solution has to be some domestic processing as well as some that go to Rwanda. But I think what's happened here is the availability of a site has superseded the sensible selection of a site. So RF, as you said in your report, RF Linton-on-Ouse has become available. It's now it's no longer used as RAF base, and there's accommodation on site. And so it seems, well, there's a site, we can use that because we need to take people out of hotels and put them in a processing centre, which I've no issue with in principle, as long as that centre's in the right place. But this is the wrong place. It's against every Home Office guideline that's ever been released. It always says, the Home Office says that asylum seekers should be located in places, major conurbations with access to public services and amenities, and that's for obvious reasons. Young single men need something to do, all kinds of things they could do if they're not kept occupied, and so simply this is wrong. And to put that burden on a single small community is absolutely disgraceful in my view, and it must be reconsidered. We're planning a judicial review of this, a legal challenge to this in the courts. So UK courts, I hasten to add, not Strasbourg, but to try and stop the Home Office if they won't be persuaded not to go through with this. I've spoken to the Prime Minister on a number of occasions about this. He again is very sympathetic. They're looking for the solutions. They say now they haven't made a final decision, so I really want them to use that breathing space they've got by saying that to reconsider and to decide they've made a wrong decision here and put this somewhere else.
Well, they say they haven't made a decision, but they're hiring staff. They're hiring some activity coordinator who's going to train all these nice young Somali men in an all-male production of cats or whatever they're going to do all day long at this RAF base. It's shocking to hear you talk about 9-year-old girls in their home village being terrified, and yet they seem to have less legal redress than these people just reprieved by whichever Azerbaijani or Albanian jurist it was in Strasbourg. They don't really have much to go on other than persuading the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary to change their minds, do they?
No, that's right. I mean, if the Home Office decide to push ahead with these plans, they've got emergency powers they can use to just push ahead with it, which again I think is disgraceful. There's supposed to be consultation with the local authorities, with the health services, public services, with the local police. Never happened. So, and the Home Office seems determined to do this, in any circumstance. So, again, I think we've persuaded them, hopefully, to think again. We need to keep the campaign up. We need to object to this by any means possible, including by legal means. We'll continue to do that. But I think what hopefully we will see is there's a recognition that made a huge mistake with this. You cannot do this to a village. You might as well just say to the village, abandon your homes, because it is that catastrophic. You just will not have the freedoms you would expect in this country, and particularly in a small village in North Yorkshire. So on every different level, it's simply wrong, and the Home Office can't simply think their own priorities, their national priorities, to deal with this issue, which I completely understand and accept and will support by other means in terms of the Rwandan policy or otherwise. But I think in terms of putting a reception centre in a small village, and this won't be the last attempt to do this either. There are 6 other facilities planned around the UK. So this could happen in anybody's area, in that small village, in any part of the country where there's a suitable former base. So simply wrong. I'll oppose this with every breath in my body, as I said.
Thank you for that, Kevin. And as you said, it's going to be in other parts of the country too. And just to clarify what we were talking about, those 12 guys who landed on a Devon beach last night, they have the right to take their case instantly, just from setting foot on that English beach, to the European Court of Human Rights. In dusty British overseas territories on the other side of the planet, you have the right to take your case to the Privy Council in London. Who do the villagers of Linton on Ouse get to take their case to? Who will speak for the residents of England and the rest of the UK? Your thoughts coming next. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Statman Jamie Jacobs returns to the show, as does Natalie Winters. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Stephen says, get me a ticket to Rwanda so I can leave the messed up UK. You may have come up with the perfect compromise solution following that European Court decision that we just let whoever wants to move into the United Kingdom, and the population of the United Kingdom gets on that plane and moves to Rwanda. That is win-win. Edie says, I lived in Uganda for 3 years in the late 90s. It's next door to Rwanda. I love Africa and would go again in a heartbeat. Yeah, right now, I don't want to be... if you're Ugandan, I don't want you to think I'm Ugandaphobic or anything, but Rwanda, given all the Guardian reading liberals saying, oh, how can you send someone to Rwanda? What a terrible thing to do to anyone. It's apparently the Switzerland of Africa these days, so you'll have a grand old time. Yeah, that's what Cameron said. He said he'd visit Rwanda, but opponents to this policy would have us. But the Commonwealth's meeting in Rwanda. The Prince of Wales is going to Rwanda. 54 prime ministers are going to be meeting in Rwanda and having a big old Beano there. They wouldn't go there if it was horrible. You can send the Prince of Wales to Rwanda. You can send the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and the Prime Minister of Canada to Rwanda, but you can't send Ahmed bin Jihad to Rwanda. It's a very weird thing. We have some breaking news. Dr. Anthony Fauci, so-called, I don't think he's seen a patient in, let me wipe this out, 55 years now, because he's been in the same job for half a century. And he's tested positive for COVID-19. This is it, folks, the Fauci variant. The ultimate variant. This new, I bet it's a new strain he's got. They've cooked up just in Wuhan a couple of weeks ago. He's already got it. He was in the test scheme for it. He's got the COVID-19. We shall see whether that is the next lethal variant that has to shut us all down again. You gave up so much to protect the NHS, and the NHS wants to protect you too. NHS Sheffield tweeted this out last night. Quote, if you experience side effects after your first dose, you still need to have the second dose, as having both offers you the most protection, unquote. That's not actually true. According to the government's own paper, the COVID hospitalisation rate per 100,000 is 18 if you've had just the one dose, and goes up to a hospitalisation rate of 26.5 if you get the second dose. So on the government's own data and that of other governments such as New Zealand's, protection-wise, you may actually have less protection with the second dose. The Sheffield NHS continues, the symptoms of COVID and long COVID are much worse than the side effects of the vaccine and can last a lot longer. Well, as you'll know, if you've seen the widows and orphans of the vaccine on this show in recent weeks, the side effects include death, which does in fact last longer than COVID or so-called long COVID. Joe Ward, who's been on this show, tweeted back to NHS Sheffield, quote, how can my dad get a second dose? The first dose of the AstraZeneca killed him. He did what you asked and you've ruined our lives. Well, after that, NHS Sheffield, with the assistance of the Twitter commissars, disabled replies to the NHS tweet. Even so, the backlash was swift. A couple of hours ago, they deleted the tweet altogether, but an earlier version remains available. This crapped out health service is truly disgraceful. Quit your treating and go back to treating. Remember that? Do they still see any patients in the NHS, or are they now purely the propaganda arm of the state? The other day, Ava Vlaardingerbroek and I discussed the many people killed by these vaccines, as we often do on this show, and a little clip from that chit-chat went semi-viral. So Twitter promptly shut Ava out of her account. What's the ruling? This tweet violated the Twitter rules. Learn more. I don't need to learn more, because you basically just do it to anyone who disagrees with the official narrative. Shut up, they explained. It didn't shut Ava up.
Hi everyone. So I got locked out of my Twitter account for my latest segment on the Mark Steyn show, in which we ironically talked about how the establishment is trying to cover up the truth when it comes to vaccine injuries by using these terms as sudden adult death syndrome. The segment is still here on Instagram, God knows for how long, but please share it because it's very clear that these people don't want the truth to come out. They'll go as far as to lock your account for it.
Good on you, Ava. People are dead who shouldn't be dead, like Joe Ward's dad and many more in Sheffield and all over the world, because public health officials became propagandists and the totalitarian creeps at Twitter and Facebook and Full Fact said anything other than the official propaganda is banned. If you want more people to die, support Nadine Dorris's online harms bill, which no true Conservative government would be going anywhere near. Because Labour and the SNP have just teamed up to make it even better by adding, quote, health-related misinformation to the things the bill is going to police. It's an idea so stupid it will surely pass the House of Commons in a bipartisan landslide vote. According to one study by researchers from British universities, during the first year of lockdown, 5 times as many UK children committed suicide. 5 times as many committed suicide as died from the COVID. According to the UN, lockdown, not the virus, but the lockdown, is responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of children around the world, something like 300,000 just in the Asian subcontinent alone. Once upon a time, we used to get upset about dead kids. Now it's such a big-time yawneroo, it doesn't even make the papers. Why haven't you heard about the dead kids? Well, because it's not helpful to the official narrative and the totalitarians at Twitter, Facebook, Full Fact, and Nadine Dorris's Department of State for, what is it called? Digital Media, Culture, Sport, Artichokes, Snoods, Pink Unicorns, Bepenist Women, and Grade 1 ha-has, thinks the official narrative, that's a hell of a department, but they think the official narrative is all you need to hear. You want more propaganda? The World Health Organization's very concerned about the monkeypox, which has been around for half a century in Central and West Africa and was perfectly happy to be known as the monkeypox for all that time. But now the monkeypox is rampaging around the UK, Europe, North America. The WHO is grossly offended by its, quote, discriminatory and stigmatizing name. What do they mean by stigmatizing? Apparently, there are TV hosts out there who haven't yet been taken off the air who think the monkeypox name is funny, and they come on air and go, jabba, 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 said the monkey to the chimp. And then they play an old Debbie Reynolds clip as if the whole thing's just a big joke.
Dabba 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 said the chimpy to the monk. Dabba 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 said the monkey to the chimp.
That's not funny. It's not funny. It's stigmatizing to be a big-time killer pox and associated with ancient novelty songs. When it was just in Africa, the monkeypox was the king of the swingers, the jungle VIP.
Now I'm the king of the swingers, oh, the jungle VIP. I've reached the top and had to stop, and that's what's bothering me.
He's reached the top. He's reached the top in London, Madrid, New York, and he has no plans to stop, and the name is now what's bothering him. Natalie Winters of the National Pulse has been all over this story. Natalie, what is the new name for the monkeypox?
Well, just when you thought the World Health Organization couldn't make any worse decisions coming off of COVID-19, I think they've really outdone themselves with this. So they made a huge announcement saying that they no longer be referring to monkeypox, if I'm allowed to say it, as monkeypox. But amidst this whole statement, they actually said they're still deciding on what exactly they want to call it. But I would say the most likely contender is HMPXV. I don't know if that rolls off the tongue as nice as monkeypox does, but this was proposed by a group of over 24 scientists in the paper that was actually responsible for the World Health Organization making this decision.
HMPXZ, as we say in Her Majesty's Dominions. But I don't think it makes any difference whether it's Z or Z. I have no idea how you pronounce that. How do you pronounce it? Humpugs. Humpugs. Is that it? Is that the new name?
I think so. And then they also, so there's different lineages of this virus. There's the West African clade and then also the Congo Basin. And they want to basically rename them and just turn them into numbers, and then also introduce a third clade, which for the history of the virus has never been around. But apparently the World Health Organization, even though they're too busy trying to figure out what to rename this virus, they've had time to somehow deduce that the currently circulating strain is apparently a new one. So very unclear, but I will say that the researchers who proposed this name shift, right, it's easy to mock and ridicule, but it was leading scientific authorities from not just from research institutions like Oxford, but even health leaders from Africa, a lot of different countries. And I know public health experts, especially like Anthony Fauci, kind of done a lot of damage to that position. But it is really crazy when you see these so-called experts, not total far left nut jobs, the ones who are pushing for this change, when again, I'm not really sure who is offended by the term monkeypox.
Well, isn't the problem not that people are offended by it, but that they're insufficiently scared by it? So it's, it almost invites its jokes. There's people on the internet saying, oh, I got the monkeypox, but I was asymptomatic and that kind of thing. So it's just like people are playing it for laughs, and our leaders really want us to be terrified by it, don't they?
Which I think is really dark when you contextualize the decision in that frame of mind, because it shows you that, the powers that be really try to weaponize these viruses to make people as scared as possible. The fact that they are enraged and as a result want to completely, in an Orwellian style, rename this virus to make sure that you're sufficiently scared enough so we could say, lock down again, institute mail-in voting, start wearing masks, mandate vaccines, really shows you, I think, what is driving the calculus behind a lot of these public health experts. And it's not even objectivity, science, the scientific method. It's really a calculus based on fear.
Yeah, it's disturbing that. I shall miss the monkeypox, and I get the feeling that humpugs is never really. I hope. Please, Natalie, be careful. Humpug is out there everywhere, and you might want to wear a special to prevent yourself from humpug infection. Thank you, Dr. Tedros. You've excelled yourself this time. Natalie Winters, it's always great to see you. Thank you very much. Stump the Steyn Loons. I think I'm coming down with humpug. Stump the Steyn Loons, GBViews, GBNews.uk, as does the Statman. Jamie Jenkins. We're coming right back. Stay with us.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Petrol has gone up by 7.5 pence. I think that's a shilling and sixpence in post-Brexit currency, and that is the highest weekly rise since records began. But don't you worry, because there'll be a new record along any minute, next week, next fortnight. Jamie Jenkins is our statistical supremo. He used to be with the Office for National Statistics, and we're delighted to see him. What are we meant to make of this increase in petrol prices?
Yeah, evening, Mark. So obviously, I know you've got a worldwide audience, but we're talking about the kind of the UK situation, and what we've seen. And you're right on the money there to say that we're seeing these records every single week. So I would imagine we're going to see record prices again next week. So the Department for Transport, which is the government body that monitors fuel prices in the UK, they've been looking at petrol prices, as of kind of the RAC and the AA in the UK. And we look at the weekly change in prices. We've had data back to the 1990s now, Mark, and over the last week, we've seen the biggest weekly rise now of over 7 pence since records began. And that kind of puts into context that really small cut that the Chancellor gave back in the end of March of 5 pence per litre. At the current prices now, we've got an average of £1.87 for unleaded petrol, £1.92 for diesel. I think the important thing, Mark, is that it's up 58 pence on this time last year. So we go back 52 weeks ago, you're talking 58 pence. And remember now that historically, back in the day, the government didn't charge VAT on fuel, but they do now. And they take the VAT on top of that. So the 58 pence rise in the petrol over the last kind of year or so means the Chancellor's taken 11 pence more in VAT. So the Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak were kind of cheering the fact that they'd given 5 pence off a litre back in March, but they're making 11 pence a litre more. So actually the Treasury are coining it in more now, Mark, than what they were back before they thought they were giving a handout back to the public.
Yes, that's a brilliant point, actually. They're in fact, they give us 5 pence and then they take 11 pence off us. So in fact, when politicians go on about the windfall profits for big oil, it's also windfall profits for big politicians too. You have an interesting theory on what's driving this. Something that's different from the 90s and the 70s and all the other times we've seen petrol rocket up. This time, in all kinds of places, the oil companies are basically on a death sentence from our political class, aren't they?
No, indeed, Mark. So if you think we've had these kind of oil price spikes in previous kind of generations and decades, but most governments across the world, in the more developed world, you take the UK, they want to ban all petrol and diesel cars by 2030. So if you're a company in a country sitting on all this rich fossil fuel, well, they're talking about the fact that you've basically been given notice by many governments across the world that we're going to stop buying your product. So it makes total sense for them during this kind of crash that we've seen with regards to the Ukraine war and the petrol prices going up, that you're going to try and get a little bit more and more money out of this, because it makes sense to be doing that, Mark, because if you've been told we're not going to be buying your product in 20 years and there's plenty of supply still underneath there, why not make as much money as you can out of the public? And obviously, the Treasury rely on a lot of this duty, Mark. They make about £28 billion a year out of fuel duty, which actually is more than the combined budget of the whole of the Department for Transport. But I think the Chancellor really needs to be looking at in the UK. Now, Boris was talking last week about we're still looking at it and we're going to consider what we're going to do. But Rishi Sunak, Mark, last week was, whilst we've seen all these record prices, was out inspecting new electric buses. The average driver, if they're doing 7,500 miles a year, they're paying £500 a year more. The Chancellor, the Prime Minister, they really need to act now, because the UK cut 5 pence. just over the border in Ireland, we've seen 17 pence cut. In Germany, we've seen 25 pence. In Spain, 17 pence. So Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak really need to get kind of their act together and start looking after families rather than looking after the Treasury's pockets.
Yeah, Rishi Sunak testing electric lorries and electric buses is basically the transportation equivalent of saying let them eat cake, isn't it? Let them drive electric. I mean, this is preposterous.
No, indeed, Mark. The thing is, where's all the electric going to come from as well? We've got the cost of living crisis across the world. It's hitting the UK as well, the energy price cap. But, by October this year, the average energy prices for a household would have doubled compared to a year earlier. And that's including gas. It's including electric. We're using gas to actually make electric. There's not enough, capacity to generate the electricity to power all the homes. So if we go to 2030, and we axe all of these cars, where is the electricity going to come from, Mark? It's just absolute nonsense.
No, on the first day that there were no petrol pumps and everyone's charging their cars around the country, the lights are just going to go out everywhere. The lights are going out all over Europe, as was said before the First World War and right now too. Thank you very much, JB. It is always great to see you. Let's do a little bit of stumping before we go. A viewer called Cornholio, possibly not his real name. Mr. Cornholio says, would Churchill approve of leaving the European Court of Human Rights? This is a reference to the fact that after the Second World War, Churchill was one of the biggest proponents of the European Convention of Human Rights. In fact, it was an English lawyer who drew it up originally. But that's fascinating to me, isn't it? Nothing else from 1950 is around. 1950 was a lovely time in many ways. There were debutantes at Buckingham Palace. They've gone. There were laws against homosexuality. They've gone. There was, let me see what else. Oh, yeah, half the Middle East was still in the British Empire. That's all gone. Why is this the one bit of 1950, the European Convention of Human Rights? That's inviolable. But apparently we've got to keep it around forever. Steve says, I think Neil Oliver has things spot on. The voting system makes absolutely no difference in this country. Red, blue, yellow, green. It's all just many different heads of the same snake. John says, was it Mark Twain who said they would not have given us a vote if it meant anything? I don't know whether it was Mark Twain. It wasn't me. But it might have been Mark Twain. It's a good line, whoever said it. Listen, that is going to do it for us. While Dan Wootton is gambling and frolicking among the Kiwis, Patrick Christies has the keys to the non-electric car and he's going at it full throttle. What you got, Patrick?
Well, I'm bang up for it tonight, Mark. I've just got back from an all-male Somali cast of the musical Cats, and let me tell you what, it was absolute chef's kiss to that. We're going all the way to Rwanda, Mark, because it seems to me, Mark, that absolutely nobody is bothering to ask the Rwandans what on earth they think about the fact that this flight did not take off. So we're going to do just that. I'm also, of course, talking about why we should ditch a foreign court. I mean, that court wouldn't exist if it wasn't for us, frankly, not once, but twice. So I'm a little bit miffed that they've done us over right now. Also, is our NHS racist? I mean, no is the answer, but a new report has come out to say, yes, it is. I mean, that would come as a massive shock to all the ethnic minority nurses that we have working in there, I imagine. But we've got all that and much, much more, Mark. Back over to you, mate.
OK, I won't. If you like, by the way, if you like the Somali production of Cats, you will love the Sudanese version of Mamma Mia. That's spectacular. Don't miss a minute with Patrick. Stay safe, stay free.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGibbon from the Met Office. A warm night for many of us and then sunny and hot in places during Thursday. Temperatures are rising over the next few days, but not for everyone. There are some weather fronts in the northwest which will continue to affect parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, particularly towards the northwest. Cloud and a few outbreaks of rain here. Elsewhere, a lot of high pressure and clear spells overnight, widely across England and Wales, but some clear spells also affecting eastern parts of Northern Ireland, southern and eastern Scotland. It's really towards the far northwest of Scotland, the Northwest Highlands, the Western Isles and perhaps Shetland where we'll see some outbreaks of rain overnight. But otherwise a dry night for many and a warm night. Temperatures in the double figures across the UK. A bright start then for eastern Scotland, southern Scotland, much of England and Wales. Thursday morning. And with the strong sunshine from the word go, temperatures will shoot up. But for parts of central and western Scotland, Northern Ireland, and then elsewhere across Scotland, it looks like there'll be some showery rain turning up by the afternoon. Cooler here, but further south, it looks like temperatures will reach 29 or even 30 Celsius in some spots in the southeast. We're looking at mid-20s across parts of Wales, low 20s for parts of southern and eastern Scotland. But for Scotland, for the far north of Northern Ireland, we'll see outbreaks of rain, heavy and persistent for western Scotland by dawn on Friday. Clear spells once again further south and a muggy night to come. Temperatures really not dropping far on Friday morning and then rising quickly during the day with the strong sunshine once again. Now, for Scotland, for Northern Ireland, a weather front here will bring thicker cloud and some outbreaks of rain, perhaps fringing into the far north of England by the afternoon. But further south, with the strong sunshine,